The room was alive with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft hum of conversation. A grand celebration was underway in a luxurious suburban home, all in honor of Mark Harrington's 40th birthday. His wife, Sophia, had spared no expense to make the evening unforgettable. An open bar, a live band, and gourmet catering. The guests, a mix of family, friends, and Mark's colleagues from the hospital where he worked as a physician, mingled and admired the effort Sophia had poured into the event. Sophia was radiant in a deep blue gown, her smile warm and welcoming as she moved gracefully among the guests. But behind her practiced poise was a storm of emotions. She had spent weeks meticulously planning this event, but not for the reasons anyone might think. For months, Sophia had harbored suspicions about Mark. His late nights at work, the sudden influx of unexplained text messages, and the subtle shift in his demeanor had planted seeds of doubt. A chance glimpse of a message on his phone weeks ago had confirmed her fears. Mark was having an affair. Sophia hadn't confronted him immediately. Instead, she had decided to play the long game. Tonight, she would expose him in a way he would never forget. As the night progressed, Sophia clinked a spoon against her champagne glass, signaling for everyone's attention. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to her as she stepped forward, her expression serene but her voice carrying an undercurrent of tension. First of all, thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate Mark's milestone birthday, she began, her tone warm and affectionate. Mark, you've been such a wonderful husband and father, and I wanted tonight to be a reflection of all the love and respect you've earned. Mark, seated at the head of the table, beamed at her, clearly touched. But his smile faltered slightly as Sophia continued. I've prepared a little surprise for you, she said, lifting a small remote. A slideshow of some of your most cherished memories over the past year. The lights dimmed, and a projector whirred to life. Images began to flash on the screen. Photos of family outings, vacations, and special moments. The guests clapped and cooed, marveling at the thoughtfulness of Sophia's gesture. But then, the tone shifted. A photo appeared of Mark seated at a cafe, his hand resting on another woman's, someone who was unmistakably not Sophia. The audience gasped, murmurs rippling through the crowd. Before anyone could react further, more photos appeared. Mark and the woman, identified instantly by some of his colleagues as Emma, a nurse at the hospital, embracing, sharing a kiss, and even entering a hotel together. Mark's face drained of color, and he stammered, Sophia, what is this? Sophia turned to him, her voice steady but laced with venom. This is the truth, Mark. The truth about the man I thought I knew. Happy birthday, darling. The room erupted into chaos. Emma, who had been standing inconspicuously near the back of the crowd, froze, her face pale. Some of Mark's colleagues exchanged shocked glances, while others whispered behind their hands. Mark scrambled to his feet, attempting to calm the uproar. Everyone, please, this is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Sophia's voice rose, silencing him. You've been lying to me, to our children, to everyone here, and you thought you could keep it hidden forever. Well, now everyone knows. Emma slipped out the door amid the commotion, but her departure didn't escape notice. The humiliation Mark felt was palpable, his reputation tarnished in an instant. Sophia's work was done. Without another word, she walked out of the room, leaving the guests to grapple with the fallout of her meticulously executed revenge. The party was over, but the consequences of that night would ripple through Mark's life for years to come. The following morning, the aftermath of the party was felt like an earthquake in Mark Harrington's life. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from colleagues, friends, and even his boss. Sophia had taken the children and left the house before dawn, leaving behind only a terse note. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Mark sat in the kitchen, staring blankly at his untouched cup of coffee. The images from the slideshow played on a loop in his mind, each one a dagger of shame and regret. How had he let it come to this? He glanced at his phone, hesitating before dialing Emma's number. Emma answered on the second ring, her voice shaky. Mark, he cut her off. Don't. Not over the phone. We need to talk. In person. She hesitated before agreeing to meet him at a secluded cafe outside of town. By the time he arrived, she was already seated, her eyes darting nervously around the room. When he sat down, her expression was a mix of fear and resentment. "Do you have any idea what that did to me?" she hissed, keeping her voice low. "I had to leave the party like a criminal. People were staring, whispering." Mark raised a hand to stop her. "I didn't know Sophia would do that. I didn't think she even suspected." Emma leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Well, she did. And now everyone at the hospital knows. Do you think I'm going to keep my job after this? Do you think I even want to show my face there?" Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'll fix this. I'll talk to HR. Make sure." "You can't fix this," Emma snapped, her composure crumbling. "Your wife made sure of that. She destroyed both of us in one night." Mark sat back, defeated. He had no words of comfort to offer, no solutions to propose. The damage was done, and he knew Sophia had planned it to perfection. He couldn't even bring himself to blame her. Meanwhile, Sophia had retreated to her sister's house, where she was greeted with open arms and a glass of wine. Her sister, Olivia, had always been her confidant. And now, more than ever, Sophia needed someone to lean on. "You did what you had to do," Olivia said firmly as Sophia recounted the events of the night. "He humiliated you. He deserved every second of it." Sophia nodded, though her heart felt heavier than she had expected. The satisfaction of exposing Mark had been fleeting. Now, the reality of her crumbling marriage and the impact on their children loomed over her like a storm cloud. "Do you think I went too far?" Sophia asked quietly, staring into her glass. Olivia shook her head. "No. You gave him a taste of the betrayal he fed you for months. But now you need to focus on yourself. On rebuilding." Sophia knew her sister was right. The days ahead would be filled with lawyers, custody arrangements, and the daunting task of starting over. But she also knew she wouldn't do it alone. As for Mark, the repercussions of his actions continued to unfold. The hospital's HR department launched an internal investigation after multiple employees reported the incident, citing concerns about professionalism and workplace ethics. Emma resigned quietly before any formal action could be taken, leaving Mark to face the scrutiny alone. The scandal spread beyond the walls of the hospital, reaching patients and the broader community. Mark's reputation, once spotless, was now irreparably tarnished. Even his closest friends began to distance themselves, unwilling to be associated with the fallout of his indiscretions. For Sophia, the path forward was uncertain but filled with a quiet determination. She had survived the storm, and though the pieces of her life lay scattered, she knew she had the strength to rebuild. Mark, on the other hand, was left to reckon with the choices that had cost him everything. Months passed, and the scandal that had erupted on Mark Harrington's 40th birthday began to settle into the sediment of gossip. For the world, it was just another sordid affair, a fleeting topic for whispers at dinner parties and hospital break rooms. But for Mark and Sophia, the aftermath remained raw and unrelenting. Sophia, now living in a modest townhouse with her 2 children, had embraced a life of quiet resilience. The divorce proceedings had been swift, thanks to the overwhelming evidence in her favor. Mark's infidelity had left no room for negotiation, and the court granted Sophia primary custody of their children, along with a significant portion of their shared assets. Her mornings were a blur of school drop-offs and freelance writing assignments, an old passion she had rekindled to regain financial independence. Evenings were spent helping with homework and making plans for a future free of the shadow of Mark's betrayal. Slowly, she began to heal, the bitterness giving way to a cautious hope. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, Sophia received an unexpected message. It was from Emma. Asterisk, "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I owe you an apology. Could we meet? Please." Asterisk. Sophia stared at the screen for a long time before responding. The idea of facing Emma was unsettling, but curiosity, and a need for closure, won out. They arranged to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. When Sophia arrived, Emma was already there, fidgeting with her cup of tea. She looked worn, her once polished demeanor replaced by a palpable vulnerability. As Sophia sat down, Emma spoke first. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling, "for everything. I never meant to hurt you or your family." Sophia studied her for a moment before replying. "But you did. You knew he was married." Emma nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I know, and I hate myself for it. I thought it was more than what it was. He made me believe it was." Sophia's expression softened slightly. She had expected excuses, maybe even defensiveness, but not this. "Why are you telling me this now?" Emma took a deep breath. "Because I've lost everything too. My job, my reputation, my self-respect. And I've had a lot of time to think about the choices I made. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better, to own up to my mistakes." Sophia regarded her carefully. She felt no pity for Emma, but there was a sense of grim satisfaction in seeing the consequences unfold. Still, she decided she wouldn't carry the burden of hate any longer. "I appreciate your apology," Sophia said finally, "but forgiveness isn't something I can give you today. Maybe not ever. What you did changed my life, my children's lives. But I hope you learn from this. Truly." Emma nodded, her expression a mix of gratitude and regret. As Sophia left the cafe, she felt a weight lift from her chest. She didn't need to forgive Emma to find peace, but confronting her had given her a sense of finality. Meanwhile, Mark's life had become a series of desperate attempts to rebuild. His career was in shambles, with patients requesting to be reassigned and colleagues keeping their distance. The hospital had moved him to an administrative role to minimize his public presence, a demotion he bitterly resented. Loneliness consumed him. His children were cold during their brief visits, and Sophia's absence was a constant ache. For the first time, Mark truly understood the magnitude of what he had lost. Not just his marriage, but the respect and trust of everyone around him. One day, as he sat in his empty house, Mark picked up a pen and began to write a letter. It was to Sophia, an unfiltered outpouring of regret, apology, and longing. He didn't know if she would read it, but he needed to try. When Sophia received the letter, she skimmed it quickly, her emotions a swirl of anger and sadness. She folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer. She had no intention of responding. Her journey was no longer tied to Mark's redemption. Her focus was on the life she was building, a life where she could finally breathe, laugh, and dream again without fear of betrayal. Mark's regrets would remain his own, a shadow of a man trapped by his choices, while Sophia walked forward into the light. Years passed, and the Harrington saga became a distant memory for everyone except those who had lived it. Sophia, now thriving in her career as a journalist and author, had turned her pain into purpose. She had written a memoir, not a bitter diatribe against Mark, but a raw, honest account of her journey from betrayal to empowerment. The book, Through the Fire, became a bestseller, resonating with readers who saw their own struggles mirrored in her words. With its success, Sophia found herself invited to speak at events, where she shared her story with an inspiring blend of vulnerability and strength. Her children, now teenagers, had adjusted well, supported by a mother who had rebuilt their world with unwavering dedication. Sophia's life was no longer defined by what had been taken from her, but by what she had reclaimed. Mark, on the other hand, had faded into obscurity. His attempts to rebuild his life had been met with limited success. Professionally, he remained in a low-level administrative role, a far cry from the respected physician he had once been. Socially, he was isolated. The friends who hadn't abandoned him outright kept their interactions superficial. Even his children's visits were strained, marked by polite but distant exchanges. One day, Mark attended a bookstore event in a neighboring city, unaware that Sophia would be the guest speaker. He had no interest in books. He'd merely wandered in to kill time. But as he scanned the posters, his stomach tightened when he saw her face. Against his better judgment, he decided to stay. The room was packed, the audience hanging on Sophia's every word as she recounted the darkest moments of her life and how she had found the strength to rise above them. She spoke not of revenge but of resilience, emphasizing the importance of self-worth and forgiveness. Not for others, but for oneself. Mark stood in the back, unnoticed, his chest tightening with every word. He hadn't realized how deeply his actions had scarred her. Not just emotionally, but in ways that had forced her to question everything about herself. And yet, here she was, radiating confidence and grace. After the event, Sophia stayed behind to sign books and meet her readers. Mark lingered, debating whether to approach her. When the crowd thinned, he finally stepped forward. Sophia's smile faltered slightly when she saw him, but she quickly composed herself. "Mark," she said, her tone neutral. "What are you doing here?" "I didn't know you'd be here," he admitted, his voice subdued. I wanted to see you, to tell you that I read your book." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "And it was incredible," he said, struggling to find the right words. "I didn't realize, well, I did, but I didn't fully realize how much I hurt you. I'm sorry. For everything." Sophia regarded him for a moment. "Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. But I've moved on. I hope you find a way to do the same." Her words were kind but firm, leaving no room for lingering attachments. Mark nodded, understanding that this was not the place to seek redemption but to let go. As Sophia turned back to her readers, Mark left the store, his heart heavy yet oddly at peace. He had sought forgiveness from the only person who could truly give it, himself. And though he knew he would never repair the damage he had caused, he resolved to live the rest of his life with more integrity and self-awareness. Sophia, meanwhile, returned home that evening to her children and a life she had built with her own strength. She had learned to love herself again, to trust the world on her terms, and to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. Their lives, once intertwined in chaos, now ran parallel but separate, each carrying the lessons of the past into an uncertain, but hopeful, future. As the years stretched on, the paths of Sophia and Mark became even more distinct, their shared history now a faint echo in their lives. Sophia continued to flourish, her career reaching new heights. She had taken her platform as an author and speaker to advocate for women rebuilding their lives after betrayal. Through workshops, interviews, and partnerships with nonprofits, she became a beacon of hope for countless others. One afternoon, as Sophia was preparing for an upcoming seminar, her phone buzzed with a call from her son, Liam, now a college freshman. "Mom, you've got to come visit soon," Liam said excitedly. "I want you to meet my professor. She's been talking about your book in her class." Sophia laughed. "I didn't realize my fame extended to the academic world." "What's the class about?" "It's on resilience and personal growth. She said your story is a perfect example." Pride swelled in Sophia's chest. Her journey, once a source of pain, was now inspiring a new generation. She promised Liam she'd visit soon and hung up, marveling at how far she had come. Meanwhile, Mark had also begun to rebuild, though in smaller, quieter ways. He had left his administrative role at the hospital and started working at a clinic that served underprivileged communities. The work was demanding and far less prestigious than his old life, but it brought him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. One day, as he was leaving the clinic, Mark noticed a woman waiting near the entrance. She was thin and tired-looking, holding the hand of a young boy who clung to her side. Her face was familiar. "Emma?" Mark asked, approaching cautiously. She turned, her eyes widening in surprise. "Mark, I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Their conversation was hesitant at first, but eventually, Emma explained that she had left town after the scandal, working odd jobs to support herself and her son, who was now 6 years old. She didn't say it outright, but the boy's resemblance to Mark was undeniable. Mark's heart sank. "Is he?" Emma nodded. "Yes, I didn't tell you because, well, everything fell apart so quickly. I didn't think you'd want to know." Mark knelt to the boy's level, his voice soft. "Hi there. What's your name?" "Ethan," the boy replied shyly. The revelation was a shock, but it also gave Mark a new sense of responsibility. Over the months that followed, he became a part of Ethan's life, providing support and stability that Emma had struggled to offer alone. It wasn't the redemption Mark had once imagined for himself, but it was a start. Sophia, unaware of this new chapter in Mark's life, remained focused on her own. During a gala celebrating her latest book, she was approached by a familiar face. Olivia, her sister, now married and thriving as well. "You look happy," Olivia said, handing Sophia a glass of champagne. "I am," Sophia replied. "I finally learned how to let go, not just of the past, but of the need to control everything. Life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it." Olivia smiled knowingly. "Speaking of surprises, there's someone I think you should meet." Sophia turned to see a man standing nearby, tall and confident with a warm smile. Olivia introduced him as David, a successful architect who had recently moved to the city. The conversation flowed easily, and by the end of the evening, David had asked for Sophia's number. For the first time in years, Sophia felt a flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel: hope for a new love. It wasn't about replacing the past, but about embracing the possibilities of the future. As Sophia and David began a tentative relationship, and Mark navigated his newfound role as a father to Ethan, their lives, though separate, mirrored a shared truth. The past might shape you, but it doesn't have to define you. Both had found ways to rebuild, to grow, and to create meaning from the chaos they had endured. And so, life moved forward. Not perfect, but richer for the lessons learned and the resilience forged in the fire. Sophia and David's relationship grew steadily over the next year, each moment marked by a sense of maturity and understanding that came from their shared life experiences. David, a widower, understood the complexities of loss and healing. He didn't try to fill the void of Sophia's past, but instead became a partner who complemented the strong, independent woman she had become. Their bond deepened as they spent time with her children, Liam and Ava, now both teenagers navigating their own paths. David didn't try to be a replacement father, but instead offered a kind, steady presence. Slowly, the children warmed to him, and their family dynamic began to take on a new shape, different but no less meaningful. Mark, meanwhile, had fully embraced his role as a father to Ethan. The boy had brought an unexpected joy to Mark's life, a reminder of the innocence and wonder he had lost during his descent into betrayal and regret. Ethan's laughter, questions, and unconditional love became a source of healing for Mark, pushing him to become a better man. Still, there were moments of discomfort. Sophia had no idea about Ethan, and Mark wrestled with the decision of whether to tell her. While they no longer shared a life, they were forever tied through their children, and he felt she had a right to know. One day, he decided to tell her. Mark called Sophia and asked if they could meet. Hesitant but curious, she agreed, suggesting a neutral location, a quiet park where they could talk away from prying eyes. When they met, Mark looked nervous, his hands fidgeting as he sat on the bench. Sophia, calm and composed, waited for him to speak. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "It's about Emma." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "I haven't thought about her in years." "What about her?" Mark took a deep breath. "She has a son, Ethan, and he's mine." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Sophia's expression shifted from surprise to something more complicated, a mix of curiosity, disbelief, and perhaps a touch of anger. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked, her tone measured but sharp. "Because I didn't want you to hear it from someone else. And because I want to be honest," Mark said. "I've been in Ethan's life for a while now, and he's a good kid. I thought you should know." Sophia looked away, processing the revelation. A part of her wanted to lash out, to accuse Mark of yet another betrayal. But another part, the wiser, more self-assured part, recognized that his decision to tell her was a step toward accountability. "I don't know what to say," she admitted finally. "It doesn't change the past, and it doesn't affect my life now. But thank you for telling me." Mark nodded, relief washing over him. He hadn't expected forgiveness, but her calm response felt like a small victory. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history palpable. Then, Sophia stood, her voice gentle but firm. "I hope you found peace, Mark, for your sake and Ethan's." "I'm trying," Mark replied. "And for what it's worth, I'm proud of what you've built. You deserve it." Sophia gave him a small nod before walking away, her heart lighter than she expected. The conversation had closed a chapter she hadn't realized was still open. As the months went on, Sophia and David grew closer, eventually blending their lives in a way that felt natural and fulfilling. They married in a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. Liam and Ava stood by Sophia's side, their smiles genuine as they welcomed David into their family. Mark watched from a distance, his own life centered on Ethan and the quiet satisfaction of making a difference at the clinic. He didn't attend the wedding but sent a polite message of congratulations. For both Sophia and Mark, life had moved forward in its own unique way, marked by scars, but also by growth and redemption. Their paths no longer crossed often, but they remained linked by the lessons they had taught one another, however painful. And so, they each embraced their futures. Sophia with a newfound love and Mark with a commitment to fatherhood, carrying with them the understanding that even the most fractured lives can be pieced back together into something whole. Years later, life had settled into a rhythm that neither Sophia nor Mark could have imagined during the chaos of their separation. Time had softened the edges of old wounds, leaving behind lessons rather than pain. Each had built something enduring from the ashes of their shared history, and the stories of their lives had diverged yet remained connected through Liam and Ava. Sophia's marriage to David flourished, a partnership rooted in trust and mutual respect. Their blended family thrived, with Liam excelling at university and Ava preparing for her final year of high school. David, ever the patient and steady force in their lives, had become a beloved stepfather, earning the admiration of both children. Sophia herself had expanded her horizons. Her work as an advocate and author had taken her around the world, inspiring others with her message of resilience and self-worth. She was no longer defined by what she had endured but by how she had risen above it. One summer evening, the entire family gathered at their home for a barbecue. Liam had invited friends, Ava was laughing with David over a board game, and Sophia watched from the patio with a contented smile. The air was filled with the scent of grilled vegetables and the sound of carefree conversation, a testament to how far they had all come. Meanwhile, Mark had carved out a quiet, purposeful life centered on Ethan. His son, now a spirited and curious young boy, had become the anchor Mark never realized he needed. Their bond was strong, built on honesty and the determination to be the father Ethan deserved. Mark had also repaired his relationship with Liam and Ava, though it was far from perfect. They visited him occasionally, sharing updates on school and their lives. While their affection for him was cautious, it was growing, a slow rebuild of trust that Mark didn't take for granted. One day, a family milestone brought them all together. Ava's high school graduation was a cause for celebration, and she insisted on inviting both her parents, along with David and Ethan. The event was the first time in years that Sophia and Mark found themselves in the same space for more than a few minutes. The ceremony was beautiful, Ava beaming as she walked across the stage to accept her diploma. Afterward, as the families gathered for photos, there was an air of quiet reconciliation. Sophia and Mark exchanged polite smiles, their interactions civil but distant. Yet, for the sake of their children, they stood side by side for a photo, a picture of a family that had weathered its storms and found its own version of peace. As the evening wound down, Mark approached Sophia while the others mingled. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" Sophia asked, her tone neutral but not unkind. "For everything. For raising our kids into incredible people. For being stronger than I ever was." Sophia met his gaze, her expression softening. "It's taken a long time, Mark, but I've let go of the anger. We've both made mistakes, but we've both grown from them. That's what matters now." Mark nodded, a faint smile on his face. "I'm glad you found happiness. You deserve it." "So do you," she replied, glancing toward Ethan, who was showing Ava his newest drawing. "And I think you're finding it in your own way. It wasn't forgiveness in the traditional sense, nor was it a rekindling of friendship. But it was closure, a mutual understanding that they had both done their best to move forward. As the evening ended, Sophia returned to her life with David, surrounded by the family they had built together. Mark went home with Ethan, holding his son's hand and feeling a quiet sense of purpose. Their paths, once tangled in pain, had found resolution. They weren't the same people they had been, and that was a good thing. Growth had taken root where devastation once reigned, and each had discovered that even broken stories could end with hope. And so, life continued. Not perfect, but full, rich, and endlessly forward-moving. A testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of second chances.